The Galactic Empire's overconfidence. In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Empire ruled with an iron fist. Their fleets patrolled every sector, their soldiers marched in perfect formation, and their commanders never feared anyone. The Empire had existed for centuries, crushing all who dared oppose it. It was a vast, unstoppable force, with planets and systems bowing to its might. The Empire's technology was unmatched, its armies well-trained, and its power unparalleled. Everyone knew that challenging the Empire was a death sentence. The Empire's leaders, sitting in their grand war room aboard the flagship, were in high spirits. A massive hologram of the galaxy flickered before them, showing the vast stretches of space they controlled. Their victory over countless rebellions, alien races, and even other galactic empires had made them believe they were invincible. They laughed, confident that no force in the universe could ever threaten them. Commander Tyler, one of the highest-ranking officers, slapped his hand on the table as he chuckled. "Look at this," he said, motioning toward the hologram. A tiny, insignificant race of humans, scattered across their primitive little planet, daring to even consider challenging the Empire. His laughter echoed through the room. "They can't even build a proper spacefaring vessel, let alone stand against us." The other commanders joined in the laughter, some slapping their knees, others wiping tears from their eyes. The very idea of humanity being a threat seemed laughable to them. They had seen countless species rise and fall, each thinking they could outsmart or outfight the Empire. Every time, they were crushed. And the humans, well, they were no different. "We've wiped out more dangerous species than them," said General Kor, his voice dripping with disdain. "They still think they can resist us with their outdated technology." "Outdated? They're still struggling to get to the stars," Commander Tyler replied. "They may have a few ships, but they'll never match our firepower. And their weapons? Child's play." The commanders exchanged knowing glances, confident that this was no different from any other challenge the Empire had faced. To them, it was a joke. They had tracked the humans' progress over the years, watched them grow in numbers, and seen their technology improve, but none of it had been enough to make them take the humans seriously. The Empire had spies everywhere, monitoring even the most distant corners of the galaxy. They had watched humanity's slow, steady rise to space, but they also saw the flaws in their systems. "They can barely manage their own resources," said Admiral Vorn, his fingers tapping on the hologram. "Their ships are inefficient, and their technology is nothing compared to ours. We have weapons that could wipe out their entire fleet in the blink of an eye." The entire room agreed, their arrogance blinding them to any possibility of defeat. They had seen it all. There was no chance a small, primitive species like humanity could be a threat to their might. They had the power, the resources, and the technology to crush anyone who dared defy them. But as the commanders continued to laugh, there was a sudden interruption. A low hum filled the room, followed by a soft, pulsing light. A technician, standing nervously by the communication console, looked up from his screen. His face had gone pale. "Commander Tyler, there's an anomaly on the outer rim," the technician said hesitantly. The commanders stopped laughing. They exchanged puzzled looks. "Anomaly? What kind of anomaly?" Commander Tyler asked, his voice suddenly serious. "We can't identify it," the technician responded. "It's coming from a human sector, but it's not like anything we've seen before. It's a faint signal, almost like a burst of energy, but the readings don't match any known frequency." The room grew tense. The technicians quickly tried to narrow down the source of the signal. Could it be a mistake, a malfunction, or was it something else? "We've detected some unusual activity in that area before," said General Kor, his brow furrowing, "but nothing significant." "That's because you weren't paying attention," Admiral Vorn said with a scowl. "The humans can barely build ships, let alone hide something worth our time." The technician continued to monitor the strange signal, and the room fell into an uneasy silence. The commanders, still skeptical, tried to dismiss it as a glitch or a random occurrence, but something in the back of their minds gnawed at them. "There's nothing to worry about," Commander Tyler finally said, trying to regain his confidence. "Probably just some small, misguided humans playing with their toys. It won't amount to anything." But deep inside, there was a flicker of doubt, a tiny spark that no one would admit. Could it be that the humans had something they didn't know about? Something new, something dangerous. As the room returned to laughter and mockery, the signal on the screen blinked once more. This time, it was stronger. The hum grew louder, the light pulsed faster, and the commanders did not know it yet, but they were about to make a grave mistake. They had underestimated the humans, and in doing so, they were about to awaken a force they couldn't possibly comprehend. But for now, they dismissed it. After all, what could a small, insignificant race do to an empire that had crushed the most powerful species in the galaxy? As the commanders turned their attention back to their victory, they never saw it coming. Their downfall was already on the horizon, and it would come from the most unexpected place: the humans. The Empire's laughter would soon stop. Humanity's hidden weapon. While the Galactic Empire dismissed the strange signal as a mere glitch on the far edge of the galaxy, humanity's fleet quietly prepared for something unimaginable. They had spent years in secrecy, hidden behind the vast, uncharted reaches of space. The Empire, so consumed with its own arrogance, had never even suspected that the humans were developing something far beyond their own understanding. The human fleet wasn't large, but it was powerful. It didn't rely on sheer numbers or brute force. Instead, humanity's greatest weapon was something the Empire had never seen before: teleportation technology. It was a game changer, a weapon that allowed ships to move instantaneously across vast distances in space, rendering the Empire's entire defense strategy useless. Commander Isabella Clarke, a brilliant strategist, was the mastermind behind the teleporting fleet. She had once been an engineer working on basic spacecraft propulsion systems, but over the years, her obsession with finding a way to escape the tyranny of the Empire had led her to develop something extraordinary. A secret experiment, carried out in the shadows of the galaxy, had resulted in the creation of a teleportation system so advanced that it could transport entire fleets in the blink of an eye. For the past decade, humanity had kept this technology hidden, knowing that if the Empire ever discovered it, they would stop at nothing to destroy it. So, the humans moved carefully, launching only a few small ships at a time to test the system. But now, the time had come. The signal that the Empire had noticed wasn't a mistake. It was a carefully planned message from humanity, meant to draw the Empire's attention and lure them into a trap. Commander Clarke stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the stars stretch and warp as the fleet prepared for the first phase of their mission. Her crew was nervous, but she wasn't. She had planned for this day her entire life. They had trained in secrecy, worked in isolation, and now, the Empire would learn the hard way that humanity was no longer the weak, primitive species they had once been. "We're ready," said Captain Darien, her second in command. "The teleportation system is primed. We can begin as soon as you give the word." Clarke nodded. "Let's make our move." The crew moved with precision as the flagship, along with several other ships, powered up their teleporters. They weren't heading directly for the heart of the Empire just yet. Their first move would be a small strike, just enough to send a message without risking everything at once. The signal that had caught the Empire's attention was more than just a warning. It was an invitation. The humans were showing their hand, but only partially. They wanted the Empire to believe that they were still small and scattered. They wanted them to underestimate what they were capable of, just as they had done before. Suddenly, the entire fleet vanished from their location in the outer rim, leaving behind only the faintest ripple in space, as if they had never been there at all. Far away, at the heart of the Galactic Empire, the commanders were still laughing at the humans' weakness, unaware of what was unfolding. Meanwhile, in the Empire's vast star system, the humans reappeared. Without warning, A small, unmarked human warship materialized directly behind a massive Imperial destroyer. The ship's teleportation system hummed quietly as it dropped out of the warp, just a few meters away from its target. In a flash, the ship's weapons fired, unleashing a barrage of energy pulses directly at the weak point of the destroyer's shields. The attack was swift and precise, and before the Empire could react, the shields were down. As the destroyer began to fall, another human ship teleported in behind the first, this time a larger vessel. It too struck hard and fast, disabling the ship's engines before the crew could mount any sort of defense. The Empire's fleet was in chaos. The commanders back at their flagship had no idea what was happening. How could they? The human ships were moving faster than their systems could track, teleporting in and out of their defense zones, striking without warning. Each time they attacked, they disappeared, only to reappear somewhere else, confusing and disorienting the Imperial forces. On board the human flagship, Clark stood in front of the main viewport, watching as her fleet dismantled the Empire's forces. It was only a small skirmish, but it sent a powerful message. The Empire could no longer rely on its overwhelming size and firepower. It had met something new, something it couldn't predict. "We've got their attention now," Clark said softly, a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. "This is only the beginning." And she was right. The small strike, though seemingly insignificant, was just the start of humanity's war against the Empire. The Galactic Empire had laughed at humanity's attempts to challenge them. They had mocked them, belittled their technology, and written them off as weak. But now, the Empire would learn a harsh lesson. The humans were not to be underestimated. The battle had only just begun, and soon, the Empire would realize that their arrogance had cost them more than they could imagine. As Clark's fleet vanished into the stars, she knew that the fight was far from over. But she also knew one thing for certain: humanity was ready. The Empire's first encounter. The shockwave of the human fleet's first attack reverberated throughout the Galactic Empire. The Empire's commanders had believed that their might was unchallenged, that no one could threaten their supremacy in the galaxy. Yet within mere minutes, that certainty was shattered. The Empire's ships, the pride of their entire fleet, were being decimated by ships that appeared out of nowhere, striking with deadly precision, and then vanishing just as quickly. In the war room of the Empire's flagship, Commander Tyler was the first to react. His once confident smirk had now been replaced with a deep frown as he stared at the chaotic scene unfolding on the hologram. "What the hell is going on?" Tyler growled, his eyes darting back and forth between the view screen and the panicked officers around him. "We've been hit by..." "What? How could they be moving like that?" "These are human ships, damn it." "We don't know, sir," said the technician, her voice shaking as she worked to track the attackers. "The human ships are using some kind of... I don't know how to explain it, but they're appearing out of thin air. They're teleporting in and out of our defenses faster than we can react." The hologram flickered, showing the Empire's capital ships in disarray, their weapons firing wildly into empty space. Every time they thought they had locked onto a human ship, it would disappear, only to reappear in a different part of the battlefield. The once proud Empire's forces were now scrambling, their communications in disarray, as they tried and failed to catch the elusive human attackers. "How are they doing this?" General Kor asked, his voice tense. "Their ships shouldn't be able to perform these maneuvers. We have superior technology." "They're doing it because they've somehow unlocked a technology we don't understand," said Admiral Vorn, his face tight with frustration. "These humans are using teleportation, and they're doing it better than anything we've ever seen." It was impossible. The Empire's top scientists had spent years developing teleportation technology, but their results had been slow, inefficient, and dangerous. The human ships, on the other hand, were teleporting with ease, moving across the battlefield as if they had mastered the art of instant space travel. As the Empire's commanders scrambled to respond, another wave of human ships appeared out of nowhere, taking out the shields of a dreadnought before the crew could even react. The Empire's fleet had been designed to be the most powerful in the galaxy, but it was now helpless against an enemy it had underestimated. "Admiral Vorn, get our fleet in formation," Tyler barked. "We need to counterattack now. Launch all available fighters and destroy those human ships." "We've tried, sir," said the communications officer, his voice strained. "Their ships are too fast. Every time we launch a squadron, the humans teleport behind them and destroy them in seconds. We can't track them." Frustration turned to panic. The human fleet, though smaller in number, was far more agile and unpredictable than anything the Empire had ever encountered. The once imposing Imperial fleet now found itself on the defensive, retreating slowly in the face of an invisible, relentless enemy. Back on the human flagship, Commander Clark was watching the Empire's response with a calm, focused expression. She had predicted that the Empire would be caught off guard, and so far, everything was going according to plan. "Status report," Clark said, her voice steady as she glanced at her crew. "We've taken down 2 of their capital ships, and several smaller vessels are disabled," Captain Darien replied. "Their fleet is scattering. We've got them on the run." "Good," Clark said. "But don't get overconfident. We need to make them think this was a small, isolated strike. Keep them guessing. Don't let them know the full extent of our capabilities just yet." Her strategy was simple: hit hard, hit fast, and then vanish. The human ships had been designed for these kinds of operations: quick, decisive strikes followed by immediate retreat. The more the Empire tried to organize a counterattack, the more confused they would become. Clark's fleet would remain a ghost, slipping in and out of the shadows, never allowing the Empire to lock onto them. On the Empire's flagship, Tyler clenched his fists in anger. "We've underestimated them. These humans have something we didn't count on. They've turned the tide of this battle in just a few minutes." "What are your orders, Commander?" General Kor asked, his tone hard with determination. "We can't let them get away with this." Tyler stood tall, trying to project confidence, but the uncertainty in his eyes betrayed him. "We'll call in reinforcements. We'll bring in our full fleet and crush them. These teleporting tricks won't save them forever." But deep down, Tyler knew that they were dealing with something unprecedented. The human fleet had moved in ways the Empire had never anticipated. The Empire's technology was vast and advanced, but it wasn't enough to keep up with this new form of warfare. The advantage had shifted, and for the first time in centuries, the Empire found itself on the defensive against a force it had dismissed as no threat. The first encounter between the Galactic Empire and the humans had been disastrous for the Empire. Their overconfidence had led to their downfall, and the humans had proven that they were more than capable of challenging the mighty Empire. The battlefield was silent for a moment, as both sides licked their wounds and tried to regroup. But the Empire was far from finished. They would strike back with all the force they could muster, and as they prepared for their next move, one thing was certain: the war for the galaxy had only just begun. The first victory. The Galactic Empire's response came quickly. In the wake of the devastating skirmish, Commander Tyler and his officers quickly realized that they could not afford to make any more mistakes. The humiliation of being caught off guard by the humans, an unremarkable species in their eyes, was not something the Empire's leadership would tolerate. They would throw everything they had at the humans, and they would do it now. Back in the human fleet, Commander Clark watched the Empire's movements with keen eyes. The shock of their first attack had worked, just as planned. The Empire was desperate now, sending in reinforcements from every corner of the galaxy to suppress what they thought was a minor uprising. But Clark knew better. The Empire was blind to the true scale of humanity's plan. "Admiral Vorn has already mobilized their entire fleet," Captain Darien reported, studying the holographic display. "They're coming in full force now. They've got us surrounded on all sides." Clark nodded, her mind calculating their next steps. We knew they'd respond with everything they had. It's what we've been waiting for. It's time for the second phase of our plan. The human fleet had been using its teleportation technology to disrupt the Empire's forces one by one, but now the humans were about to hit them with a much more coordinated strike. The human ships would appear out of nowhere and cause chaos once again, but this time their target was the Empire's vulnerable supply lines. As Clark's fleet moved into position, they disappeared from the battlefield. The Empire, despite its superior numbers and firepower, couldn't track them fast enough. One by one, the human ships reappeared deep within the Empire's territory, striking at key supply ships and defense installations. They targeted the places the Empire valued most: vital resources, ammunition stockpiles, and supply depots that kept the Imperial war machine running. Each strike was quick, precise, and devastating. The Empire had no time to react. The human fleet would appear, disable critical systems, and then vanish before the Empire could mount a defense. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire was feeling the sting of vulnerability. On the flagship, Tyler slammed his fist against the table. "How are they doing this?" he shouted. "We've got everything covered. How are they still hitting us?" "They've outsmarted us, Commander," Admiral Vorn said quietly, his voice heavy with frustration. "Our defenses aren't built to deal with this kind of warfare. Their ships appear, strike, and disappear. We can't track them. And every time we think we have them in range, they're gone." The Empire's commanders could only watch as their resources dwindled, their war machines slowly grinding to a halt. The Empire had long prided itself on its superior technology and vast fleets, but the humans had found a way to turn that strength into a weakness. The Empire's soldiers were growing increasingly frustrated and disoriented as their supply lines were attacked, and morale within the fleet was starting to crack. "We've lost contact with several of our key supply convoys," said one of the technicians, his voice filled with panic. "They're being destroyed as soon as they enter the outer rim. No warning, no sign of the attackers." "This is impossible," Tyler muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He clenched his fists tightly. "We can't let them keep doing this. We have to make an example out of them." But as the Empire scrambled to counterattack, something unexpected happened. The human fleet, knowing that the Empire would soon catch on to their tactics, suddenly shifted its focus. They had dealt a serious blow to the Empire's supply lines, but now it was time for something bigger. The human fleet, once scattered and evasive, began to regroup. Their strategy had been carefully planned. Phase 1 had disrupted the Empire. Phase 2 had weakened them. And now, the final move would come. Commander Clark issued the order for the fleet to converge on the heart of the Empire's most vital sector, the primary Imperial defense station. It was a well-protected installation, one that controlled the flow of information and military coordination for much of the galaxy. If they could take that out, the Empire would be crippled. In a series of synchronized jumps, the human fleet appeared in the outer orbit of the station, just outside its formidable defenses. The Empire's sensors immediately registered the movement, but it was too late. The human ships were already on top of them. "What is that?" screamed an officer aboard the defense station as he saw the fleet materialize in the distance. How did they? The attack was swift. The humans launched their final assault with precision. The station's shields flared under the barrage, but they were no match for the focused firepower of the human fleet. The Empire's defenses buckled as human ships teleported into the station's interior, disabling key power generators and cutting off communications between sectors. It was a calculated strike, taking down the heart of the Empire's network. Back on the human flagship, Clark watched as the Empire's vital systems went dark. She allowed herself a small smile. "We've done it. The Empire is in disarray." For a moment, there was a brief silence as the Empire's once feared fleet seemed to falter. Their supply lines were severed, their strategic heart had been ripped out, and their vast war machine was grinding to a halt. "This victory is just the beginning," Clark said softly, watching as the Empire's capital ships tried to regain their footing. Now we've shown them that we can hit them where it hurts. Now they'll know we're not just a small primitive race. We're a force to be reckoned with. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The humans had struck their first decisive blow, and the Galactic Empire, for all its power, had learned that humanity was a force to be feared. The first victory was theirs, but it would not be their last. And as the human fleet disappeared into the shadows, the Galactic Empire could only wonder, what else did the humans have in store? The Empire strikes back, but fails. The Empire's leaders were furious. For the first time in centuries, they had been humbled, caught off guard by a species they had dismissed as unworthy of attention. After the humiliating attack on their vital supply lines and their most important defense station, the Empire could no longer ignore humanity's growing threat. The commanders had learned one painful lesson. Underestimating the humans had been a fatal mistake. Commander Tyler stood before the holographic map, watching the Empire's fleet mobilize. His face was hard with anger, his voice tight as he spoke to his officers. "Enough of this," he said, slamming his fist against the table. "We've been humiliated. No more surprises. We're going in full force. Every available ship, every soldier. We will crush them, once and for all." Admiral Vorn nodded, though his face showed signs of weariness. The past few days had been filled with frustration as the humans continued to strike with brutal efficiency, their teleportation technology evading the Empire's best efforts to track and counterattack. The enemy is cunning, but we have the numbers. The Empire's strategy was simple, a full-scale assault. With reinforcements arriving from all corners of the galaxy, the Empire now had the upper hand in terms of sheer numbers. Hundreds of Imperial warships, destroyers, and dreadnoughts were ready to move in. The human fleet was scattered, still reeling from the victory they had just achieved. It was time to retaliate. "Lock onto their last known positions," Tyler ordered. "We'll flood the area with every available ship. No matter where they teleport, we will be there waiting." The Empire's sensors stretched across the galaxy, tracking every signal, every faint disturbance. The Empire believed that it was only a matter of time before the humans would be cornered and crushed. They underestimated the humans' resourcefulness, thinking their teleportation was the only trick they had. On the human flagship, Commander Clark was watching the Imperial movements with a cold, calculating gaze. She knew the Empire was gathering its full might, preparing for an overwhelming counteroffensive. She had expected this, and that was exactly why the humans had planned their next move with care. "Status report," Clark said, turning to her crew. "We've detected a massive buildup of Imperial ships near our last known location," Captain Darien replied. "They've mobilized everything. This is their full force coming for us." Clark nodded, her face calm. "We knew this was coming. Prepare for Phase 3. It's time we show the Empire what happens when they make the wrong assumptions." The human fleet had a plan. While the Empire was focused on tracking their movements, the humans would use their own knowledge of the Empire's tactics against them. They had been luring the Empire into a trap that was about to snap shut. As the Empire's fleet arrived in the outer sectors, Commander Tyler's voice rang through the communications channel. "Close in on their position. Do not let them escape this time." But the human ships were already gone. The Empire's fleet found nothing. They had scanned the area with everything they had, only to realize that the humans had teleported away once again, disappearing before they could even open fire. But it wasn't the humans' fleet they were after anymore. They had fallen right into the trap. At that moment, hundreds of human ships reappeared, not far from the Empire's flagship, in a location that the Empire had not anticipated. The human fleet was not scattered. It had gathered, converging on the Empire's weakest point, the Empire's own command fleet. The Empire had been so focused on eliminating the humans that they had failed to notice one crucial detail. The humans were not simply running from the Empire's might. They were setting the stage for an all-out strike on the Empire's very heart. As the human fleet began its assault, the Empire's dreadnoughts and destroyers were caught off guard, their shields flaring under the sudden barrage. Human ships teleported into key positions, appearing behind the largest Imperial warships and targeting their vulnerable systems. In a matter of minutes, the Empire's flagship, once thought to be invulnerable, was under attack. What? How? Admiral Vorn's voice faltered. How did they? Tyler's eyes widened as he watched the holographic map. The human ships were everywhere, striking at the heart of their command structure with brutal precision. We can't lose the flagship. Hold them off, he shouted, but it was already too late. Human ships teleported in and out of the Imperial formation, systematically disabling their weapons systems, crippling their shields, and cutting off communication lines. The Empire had no response, no way to stop it. Their full fleet was tied up in trying to defend against a force they could not predict. It's a trap, General Kor shouted. They've been drawing us in all along. We're the ones caught in the open, not them. The chaos among the Imperial forces grew as ship after ship fell, unable to defend themselves against the relentless teleportation strikes. Despite the Empire's massive numbers, their sheer size and overconfidence had become their downfall. They had spread themselves too thin, leaving themselves vulnerable to the very force they had so easily dismissed. On the human flagship, Commander Clark stood at the center of the command room, watching the battle unfold. She had led the Empire to believe they were victorious, only to turn the tide when they least expected it. Now, as the last of the Imperial defenses crumbled, she allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. The Empire had struck back, but they had failed. "We've done it," Captain Darien said, his voice full of relief and pride. "We've broken their fleet." Clark nodded, her face hard with resolve. "This is just the beginning. The Empire is not going down without a fight, but we've shown them one thing. Humanity is no longer a joke." As the remnants of the Empire's fleet scattered, retreating into the depths of space, it was clear this was the beginning of a new phase in the war. The Galactic Empire had struck back, but their counterattack had only pushed them further down the path of defeat. Humanity's resilience had proven to be more than the Empire could handle, and the galaxy would never be the same. A turning point for humanity. The battle was far from over, but humanity had won something crucial, a victory that would echo across the galaxy. The Empire, once certain of its domination, was now stumbling. The human fleet, smaller but increasingly more organized and strategic, had crippled the Empire's pride and had made them question their dominance. Commander Clark knew that now was the time to capitalize on their success, but she also knew that the hardest part was yet to come. Back on the human flagship, Clark stood in front of the holographic map, her fingers hovering over the tactical display. The Empire had suffered a blow, but they were far from defeated. They would regroup, they would rebuild, and they would retaliate. Humanity couldn't rest on this success for long. It was only a matter of time before the Empire struck back with everything they had. "We've made them bleed, but they'll come for us harder now," Clark said, her voice firm as her crew gathered around her. Captain Darien nodded. "The Empire is still massive. They can rebuild their fleet faster than we can hope to match them. We've hurt them, but not enough to end the war." Clark's face remained calm, though her mind was racing. The humans had made significant progress, but now they were playing a dangerous game. The Empire might have underestimated humanity's ability to strike, but Clark knew they were intelligent enough to adapt. The advantage had shifted, but it wasn't permanent. Humanity needed to make a bold move, something decisive to turn the tide of the war for good. "We need to hit them where it hurts most," Clark said, her voice cold with determination. "We'll go after their core, their capital, their leadership. If we can break their command structure, we'll shatter their resolve." She had a plan, a risky one, but it was their best chance at turning the war into humanity's favor. Clark knew that if they took down the Empire's leadership, it would send a message across the galaxy. The humans were not only capable of fighting back, but they were also capable of winning. The war was shifting, and if humanity could strike at the Empire's heart, they could force the Empire into a defensive position they couldn't recover from. The human fleet began its preparations for the most dangerous mission of their existence. It wasn't going to be easy, far from it. But if humanity was going to emerge victorious, this would be the moment that decided it all. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Empire, Commander Tyler was seething with rage. The humiliation of his defeat still burned in his mind, and he knew that the humans were not going to be satisfied until they had taken everything from the Empire. They had already crippled the fleet, taken out their supply lines, and attacked their defense stations. They had gone from being a joke to becoming the most dangerous threat the Empire had ever faced. "We cannot allow this to continue," Tyler said, his voice hard. He slammed his fist against the table in frustration. "The humans are growing stronger with every victory. They've taken too much from us already." Admiral Vorn, still shaken from the earlier defeats, spoke carefully. "They've struck at the heart of our operations, but they're not invincible. If we rebuild, we can still crush them." "You're right," Tyler replied, narrowing his eyes. "But they've proven they can strike anywhere, at any time. We can't let them keep us on the defensive. We need to take control of this war." Tyler's mind began to churn with ideas. He knew the humans were resilient, but there was a way to end this. He just needed to find it. For humanity, the next move was already in motion. Clark's plan was set into motion as the human fleet moved toward the Imperial capital. The Empire's leadership was stationed at the heart of their domain, a heavily fortified planet surrounded by layers of defense, a virtual fortress in space. It was a mission that seemed impossible, but humanity had already defied the odds once before. Clark, Captain Darien, and the rest of the human fleet were prepared for the greatest challenge of their lives. The Empire's capital was unlike anything they had ever faced before. It was a symbol of the Empire's strength, and it was protected by the most advanced weapons and defenses humanity had ever encountered. But Clark knew that if the humans could succeed here, they could end the war. If they failed, it would mean everything, every victory, every sacrifice, would be for nothing. "We'll infiltrate their defense grid," Clark explained to her officers, her voice steady but filled with purpose. "We've trained for this. Our teleportation technology gives us an edge, but we can't take anything for granted. We'll move in with precision, strike fast, and disappear before they can counterattack. We hit them hard and make sure they can't retaliate." The stakes were higher than ever, and Clark knew that the human fleet would need to be at its best. No mistakes, no hesitation. As the human ships made their approach, they disappeared into the depths of space, out of the Empire's detection range. The Empire's forces were not expecting them to appear so soon, and the entire fleet was thrown into a state of confusion as human warships materialized at the heart of the Imperial defenses. Clark's voice was steady as she gave the command. "Prepare to engage. This is the moment we've been fighting for." Human ships teleported behind the Empire's first line of defense, launching a barrage of attacks that sent shockwaves through the Empire's fortress. The once invincible defenses began to buckle, systems failing one by one as the human fleet methodically disabled the heart of the Empire's defenses. Back on the Empire's command station, the leadership was thrown into chaos. The moment they had been dreading had arrived. "Why are they here? How did they get past our defenses?" Tyler shouted, watching the holographic map as human ships appeared in all the wrong places, striking at the center of their command structure. The Empire's leadership was scrambling. They had no answers, and for the first time, they had no control. The battle for the Empire's heart had begun, and humanity was determined to see it through to the end. The stakes had never been higher, and in this moment, humanity was on the cusp of changing the course of history. The final battle and the Empire's fall. The human fleet was in the heart of the Empire's most fortified stronghold, the capital. They had penetrated the core defenses, and now they were fighting tooth and nail to strike at the Empire's leadership. The odds were overwhelming, the risk of failure high, but the humans were driven by a singular purpose: to bring down the Empire and end their reign of terror once and for all. Commander Clark stood at the front of the flagship, watching as the battle raged. The once unassailable Empire was beginning to crumble, its heart exposed. For all the Empire's power, for all the billions of ships and soldiers, they could not match the cunning, the resolve, and the innovation of humanity. "We've reached their command center," Clark said, her voice steady, betraying none of the tension she felt. "This is it. We're hitting their leadership directly. No more distractions. No more delays." The humans knew that taking out the command center would be the final blow. If the leadership of the Empire fell, the entire structure would collapse. The Empire's forces, no matter how vast, were nothing without their leaders, and humanity had come prepared. The flagship and several other ships teleported in and out of the Empire's inner circle, launching precise attacks on the core systems. The entire capital was now in a state of chaos. The once pristine war rooms, filled with Imperial leaders giving orders and planning their next move, were now lit only by the flashing red lights of alarms. Inside the war room, Commander Tyler slammed his hand on the control panel. "Where are they? How did they get past our outer defenses? We cannot let them reach the central core." "Sir," said a trembling officer, "their teleportation technology. It's unlike anything we've seen. They're everywhere. We can't track them. We can't even predict where they'll appear next." Tyler's face was a mask of frustration. How did we not see this coming? We're losing control of everything. It wasn't just the command center that was under attack. The entire Imperial system was unraveling. With every passing moment, human ships teleported into vital points. Communications, power generators, shields. The Imperial forces, unable to defend against such unpredictable strikes, began to lose cohesion. The Empire's fleets, scattered and disoriented, struggled to reorganize, and the heart of the Empire was rapidly losing its grip. Back on the human flagship, Clark gave the final command: "Target the central control hub. Disrupt their command systems once and for all. This ends now." The human fleet moved in swiftly. The teleportation system hummed as ships appeared directly within the heart of the capital. They appeared in hallways, behind Imperial officers, in control rooms, all at once. The Empire had no time to respond. As human ships took out key systems, the Empire's power grid began to fail. The central hub of the Empire, the nerve center of their entire military apparatus, was on the verge of collapse. The Empire's leaders were now scattered, disorganized, panicked. There was no clear command, no unity. The Empire had been reduced to chaos, and the human fleet was relentless. Within minutes, the control room fell silent as the last of the Empire's defenses crumbled. The holograms flickered out, and the once imposing figures of the Empire's leadership now stood in the dim, ruined remnants of their command station. It was over. "We've done it," Captain Darien said, his voice full of disbelief as he turned toward Clark. "The heart of the Empire has been destroyed. Their leadership is gone." Clark nodded, her eyes cold and calculating. The Empire was built on fear and control. But without their leaders, they have nothing. The galaxy has finally seen the truth. They are no longer invincible. But Clark also knew that there would be no time for celebration. There was still much work to be done. The human fleet had won a decisive victory, but the galaxy was vast. The remnants of the Empire's military would still fight, and other forces would rise to challenge humanity's newfound strength. The war wasn't over, but this moment marked a crucial turning point in history. As the last of the Imperial ships fled or were destroyed, the human fleet began to regroup. The Galactic Empire had fallen. Its once mighty fleets scattered, its capital reduced to rubble, and its leaders defeated. But the humans knew that this was only the beginning. The fall of the Empire was just the start of a new era. A new order was rising, and humanity would shape the future. As Commander Clark stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the remnants of the Empire vanish into the vastness of space, she allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. This victory had cost them much, but it was a victory nonetheless, and humanity had shown the galaxy that no matter how strong an enemy might seem, there was always room for resilience, for courage, and for hope. The stars outside twinkled brightly, and Clark knew that humanity had just taken its first steps into a future filled with endless possibilities. The Empire had fallen, and humanity's story had just begun.